This story begins 10,000 years ago with both the history of the royal family and Calamity Ganon. Being an embodiment of the hatred Demise had on the original hero that defeated him long ago, those who shared the spirit of the hero and blood of the goddess would be eternally bound to a curse. An ancient evil would be reborn time and time again in an endless cycle, and could only be stopped by the sword crafted by the goddess Hylia all the way back in Skyward Sword. This ancient evil would be turned back time and time again by the warrior with the soul of a hero and a princess with the blood of the goddess. Through the passage of time, these conflicts with Ganon would be passed down as legends and fairy tales. But within all these stories, there lay one truth. One that would lead up to the events of the Great Calamity. The Sheikah tribe was a powerful race due to their advanced technology and intelligence. As powerful as some monsters were, they had posed little to no threat to this thriving civilization. However, an ancient evil had been on the verge of returning to the realm of Hyrule. To protect the citizens of the kingdom, the royal family took advantage of this technology and created the Divine Beasts. A legion of autonomous weapons called Guardians were built, and individuals from the Rito, Zora, Goron, and Gerudo were chosen to pilot the Divine Beasts. Sheikah towers were constructed across the land, and shrines were built in order to test the hero so they would be ready for the inevitable battle against Ganon. The plan had been set in motion. Once Calamity Ganon returned, Hyrule was ready. The princess, hero, and champions fought together to defeat this ancient evil. The Guardians protected the hero as the Divine Beasts unleashed their attack on Ganon. And once the hero delivered the final blow with the sword that sealed the darkness, the princess with the blood of the goddess used her sacred power to seal the evil away. Ganon had once again been defeated. Hyrule would continue to be at peace, but that was going to come to an end soon. Once the Calamity was sealed, the royal family became threatened by the same technology used to defeat the ancient evil. Afraid that the Sheikah would use their technology against the kingdom, the king banished them from the land. While many of them agreed to abandon their technological advances to live normal lives within Kakariko Village, others swore allegiance to Calamity Ganon out of pure hatred to those that exiled them. This group of Sheikah eventually turned into the Yuga clan, and would destroy anyone who opposed Ganon. The technology created by the Sheikah was then hidden away for thousands of years within the ground. Songs of the ancient hero who defeated the Calamity were passed down, and will later on be found by Cass's teacher to help aid Link in his eventual quest. Once again, the stories of Calamity Ganon turned into legend, and the Sheikah tribe's technological past was wiped from history. Hyrule would once again be at peace for 10,000 years. But like before, this peace would not last forever. Throughout the generations of the royal family bloodline, King Rome Bosphoremous Hyrule would eventually become the ruler of the kingdom. At some point during his reign, he had a daughter, and to keep with the traditions of the royal family, she would be called Zelda. At around this time, one of the knights in the royal guard had a son named Link. He would eventually grow up and follow his father's footsteps, becoming the youngest accomplished knight for the royal family. At around the age of 4, Link along with other Hylians had visited Zora's domain at the request of the king. While there, he met the Zora princess known as Mipha. According to her, he made quite the first impression and was full of energy. Because of his recklessness, however, she would often heal his wounds. This led to them becoming very close, and due to this, they spent quite a bit of time together. During this time, he became good friends with the other Zora and joined a small group called the Big Bad Baz Brigade. Link's skill in his swordsmanship led to him teaching Baz how to fight, and he would later become a guard for King Dorephan. Soon after, Link had departed. However, this would only be the beginning of a journey filled with heartbreak and sorrow for the Zora princess and the Silent Swordsman. Throughout the beginning of Zelda's life, her mother would visit the chief of the Gerudo and her closest friend, Urbosa. After Zelda had been born, the queen traveled to Gerudo Town in hopes of showing her dear friend her newborn child. Urbosa stated that the way her friend gazed upon her daughter had been one of unconditional love. The queen's little bird would soon spread her wings and become a beacon of light to Hyrule during its eventual downfall into darkness. And it would all start with a prophecy.
Stories of Ganon were passed from generation to generation in the form of legends and fairy tales. But there was also a prophecy.
The legends and fairy tales of an ancient evil suddenly became reality when a Sheikah fortune teller predicted the return of Calamity Ganon. The signs were clear. An evil that had been sealed away for thousands of years was going to return to the land of Hyrule, and the only way to stop it had been buried deep in the ground. As soon as the king heard this, excavations of the old relics began in order to retrieve the weapons once used to defeat this evil. The 4 divine beasts were dug up along with the autonomous weapons known as Guardians. Even though this ancient technology was found, it would take a few years until it could be controlled. The Divine Beasts had lacked an important key to the puzzle before they could be used. Zelda had yet to unlock her sealing power, and the warrior with the soul of the hero was still unknown. Even though the princess would eventually need to be the one to seal Calamity Ganon away, her love for research caused her to take a great interest in the Divine Beasts. Even the king was aware of this, acknowledging her knack for research. With the mother, however, she would be able to learn the sealing power that was passed down from generation to generation. But then, disaster struck. The queen had unexpectedly passed away. This had shocked the king, as he mentioned how sudden it was. He was now without a wife, and Zelda was without a mother. But even though she was merely a child of 6 years old, Zelda had never cried. Rome described her as acting that of a born leader, but was fully aware of the grief she was holding back. Calamity Ganon would return soon, and without a mother and mentor, Zelda would have a lot more pressure in unlocking her power. Rome would have to act not as a father, but a king, and order Zelda to begin her training. Rumors of the return of Calamity Ganon had begun to spread throughout Hyrule. Word that pilots would need to be chosen to control the Divine Beasts also was made known. In Rito Village, one particular person got wind of this and was prepared to take up the offer if asked. Having great skill in archery, Revali was the pride of the Rito and received praise everywhere he went, breaking all previous archery records. He felt that he was more than capable in defeating Calamity Ganon once he returned. While considered the best, he continued to push his limit in hopes of proving himself to the world. It was only a matter of time until he was offered the chance to become a pilot for Divine Beast Fameto. During this time, he began to work on a special ability where he could control the updraft. It was seen as an impossible feat, but he would continue to develop it in hopes that it would assist him in the future. With Mipha, Urbosa, and Revali set up to become the eventual champions of Hyrule, Link was yet to cross paths with the final champion. While looking for rocks to eat at the peak of the mountain, the girl on Daruk had witnessed a person being attacked. While heading down the mountain to help him, he noticed his great ability in swordsmanship despite being a kid. While distracted, the Hylian would end up saving his life and Daruk would be grateful to the young swordsman. After bonding over food, he learnt that the young kid's name was Link. From that day on, they were sworn brothers. The identities for the future champions were finally revealed, and all of their paths would one day collide, for better or for worse. As the days went on, further investigation into the ancient technology was done. Zelda's interest in the ancient civilization led her to meeting Impa, the leader of the Sheikah tribe. She proceeded to get to know other respectable members, including Pura and Robbie. She would later on embark on an excavation with them in hopes of finding an ancient technology to operate the guidance stones. However, there was one other Sheikah that accompanied Zelda during her examination of the ancient Sheikah ruins. A court poet for the Hyrulean royal family, and the person who would eventually become Cass's mentor. It didn't take long before a mysterious tablet was found. It was a rectangular object with Sheikah text covering the strange device. While its functionality was still unknown, Impa suggested that Zelda hold on to it. After finding no mention of its name in records, the tablet was officially called the Sheikah SLATE. After experimenting with the device, some functionality was eventually restored to the tablet. The camera rune was restored, which would eventually help in regaining the hero's memories. While this was a groundbreaking discovery, both Zelda and Pura knew that there was much more about the tablet not yet known. It was believed that the SLATE had a function to operate guidance stones, but it was yet to be discovered. The return of Calamity Ganon was drawing near. All the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but the threat was still real. The champion still needed to be selected, some functionalities of the Sheikah SLATE had not been restored at this point, and Zelda was still struggling in unlocking her power. Without her mother, the results of her training always ended in failure. Urbosa would eventually travel to Hyrule and meet Zelda once again. It had been a year since she last saw her at the Queen's funeral, and accompanied her to the spring to train. However, the pressure Zelda felt was clear as she witnessed the young girl nearly pass out in the spring's icy waters. Zelda's guilt of not being useful to her father and Hyrule was beginning to take a toll on her, and doubt began to fill her mind. Little did Zelda know that her soon-to-be appointed knight was going to be chosen. Back at Hyrule Castle, the experimentations of Guardians led to one malfunctioning and firing lasers in every direction. Without a worry for his own life, a young boy had grabbed a pot lid and deflected the laser right into the machine's weak spot. After being destroyed in one hit, the king acknowledged the child's bravery, and not long after that was chosen as Zelda's knight. This young boy was Link, and would be responsible for the eventual defeat of Ganon. At some point, due to unknown circumstances, Link obtained the Master Sword in the Korok Forest. While the time that this occurred isn't known, it may have happened before he was chosen to be the princess's appointed knight. At this point, however, the Master Sword wasn't at its full power since it was not in the awakened state. After being gone from Zora's domain for a long period of time, Link would return and be reunited with Mipha. While happy to see him, Mipha notices that the once full of energy Hylian she had come to know was replaced by a silent, less emotional swordsman. While still showing kindness to the Zora princess, she notes that while it might just be his height, he was looking past her and into the distant beyond. Little did Mipha know that this would be the result of all the pressure put onto the hero, as he was the one who would need to defeat the Calamity. With the hero chosen, the pilots for the Divine Beasts needed to be recruited. Zelda traveled to Gerudo Town, Goron City, Rito Village, and Zora's Domain to recruit Urbosa, Daruk, Revali, and Mipha. But the threat of Calamity Ganon returning was getting more dire, as Urbosa claimed the Yiga were after the Thunder Helm, a treasured heirloom, even going as far as to try and take out both Zelda and the Chief. Her resentment for Ganon once being a Gerudo drives her to accept Zelda's proposition for the sake of revenge. Revali, however, was taken aback by the thought of being a sidekick for the sword's chosen hero. His confidence in his abilities clouded his judgment, as he would grow to dislike Link out of jealousy for not being the one given the pleasure of defeating Ganon. But Revali's desire to prove himself to the world resulted in him accepting the offer once the princess visited him the next day. He had also finally mastered his special ability, which would be called Revali's Gale, and ironically end up helping Link in his quest to defeat the returning ancient evil. Daruk accepted Zelda's request without hesitation, willing to lay down his life for the sake of his people and all of Hyrule. Mipha would also accept, believing this to be her destiny as well as because she could assist Link in his overall mission. However, she realizes the risks that are involved with a responsibility such as this, and knew that she would have to leave her baby brother Sidon to fulfill her destiny with Ruta. Plenty of time passed, and stories of a Lionel terrorizing people on Polymos Mountain began to surface at the domain. Once Link returned, Mipha told the young swordsman about the beast, and he made his way up to defeat it. After following him and arguing, the Lionel attacked the two of them from behind. Just as Mipha thought it was over for both of them, Link swiftly defeated the enemy. His graceful movements as he disposed of the monster caught Mipha's eye, and she began to develop romantic feelings towards him. Mipha was doomed to fall in love with her childhood friend. She would begin to gather materials to create Zora armor for Link, a tradition that the Zora princesses would do for the ones they would eventually marry. But not everyone was on good terms with the hero chosen by the sword. Zelda would grow to dislike the idea of having a personal knight, and resented her father for this decision. Little did she know that her guardian would also have struggles similar to her, and that they would both be involved in something bigger. After receiving her father's blessings to pilot the Divine Beast along with many tears, Mipha prepares to head to Hyrule Castle for the inauguration ceremony. At this time, she had gathered all materials needed to make the armor for Link, and would begin creating it, but this would all end up being for nothing, as things were going to take a turn for the worse. At Hyrule Castle, the ceremony dubbing the four brave souls as champions along with the sword's chosen hero and princess was taking place. They were given sacred garb crafted by Zelda, along with Link's champion tunic, the blue being a symbol of the royal family, one that was passed down for countless generations. A picture of the group would be taken not long after the ceremony, by who was assumed to be Pura. This photo would eventually fall into the hands of Cass's mentor, being passed down to Cass, and then the hero Link once he completed the champion's Ballad. But Zelda's hostility towards Link would prove to be an issue and cause problems in the future. A private ceremony would take place shortly after for the sword's chosen hero, dubbed the Ceremony of Legend. However, it was clear to the champions that something was very wrong between the princess and her knight. Urbosa was worried about Zelda, Daruk had concern for Link, and Revali was filled with doubt regarding the hero and being capable of fulfilling his duty. Mipha also came to realize that Link would be spending plenty of time with the princess, and that she wouldn't be able to see him much. Soon after, the four champions started training to pilot the Divine Beasts. Revali was able to master it no problem, and both Urbosa and Mipha had managed just fine. Daruk, however, struggled with controlling it. Zelda and Link would first travel to Rito Village, where Revali confronted the hero, going as far as to show off his special ability dubbed Revali's Gale. He was disappointed as Link had no reaction at all, even when the Rito champion tried provoking him. Following these events, both the princess and her appointed knight would eventually travel to Goron City in hopes of making adjustments to Rudania so Daruk would have an easier time controlling it. Revali wouldn't be the only one to notice Link's silence, as Zelda would go on to write in her journal about his lack of words or emotion. The feeling of his eyes on her as they walked made her feel anxious, since she could never understand his thoughts. He would despise a daughter of the royal family who couldn't even use a sealing power. After letting Daruk wander aimlessly around within the Divine Beast for a day, he soon got the hand of operating the giant machine. With all the champions properly trained, the plan to defeat Ganon became more of a reality. However, it was clear that his resurrection was close as the mountains began to violently shake. The clock was ticking, and now all pressure was on Zelda and unlocking her sealing power. Back at Hyrule Castle, Robbie was able to restore the mobility of many guardians excavated from the ground, but according to the records, many more had yet to be found and resided within 5 pillars beneath Hyrule Castle. All attempts to locate them ended in failure, as they were too deep in the ground to be uncovered. But these pillars were designed to sense the arrival of Ganon and activate once he returned. The ancient structures referred to as shrines would start appearing all across Hyrule, and all attempts to enter them resulted in failure. While the princess had the task of training the Springs of Power and Courage, most of her time was spent researching this ancient technology. While the conclusion was made that the Sheikah Slate was the key to entering them, they still lacked the power of the towers that lay hidden within the ground across the kingdom. Conflict would arise as a result of Zelda going off by herself, and would get angry at Link for following her. Overcome with guilt, she would start to avoid him by staying in Gerudo Town due to their law forbidding men from entering. After requesting to meet the chief, Urbosa helps Link by teaching him a trick to bypass the security of the town by dressing up as a woman. But despite his best efforts, Zelda continues to evade him. Urbosa would promise to contact Link the next time she saw the princess, believing that the two needed each other. Zelda would return to the wasteland to do more research on Naboris, along with Urbosa. Urbosa would call Link over to meet her, learning more about Zelda's struggles as a daughter of the royal family. However, at this time, a plot to kill the princess was being orchestrated in the shadows. With Zelda being the daughter of the royal family with a sealing power, she was the only one who would stand in the way of Ganon's return. 3 Yiga foot soldiers set out to eliminate Hyrule's final hope, but ultimately failed when Link came to her aid. It was clear that the sword's chosen hero was going to be a problem for the group, which would result in the attempted assassination of him in the future. Link's actions of protecting the princess would not go unnoticed, however, as Zelda begins to realize that her impressions of the emotionless swordsman were wrong. His selfless act to protect her from the Yiga clan causes her to want to get to know him more, as she wanted to apologize for her actions as well as talk to him. Link then opens up to her, as he states how he felt it necessary to stay silent and bear the burden with so much at stake and everyone's eyes on him. Realizing that his problems are similar to hers, she wishes to get to know him more and hear him speak openly. She would eventually fall in love with her appointed knight. However, not everyone would be happy about this development. During her examinations of ancient technology, Cass's teacher began to fall in love with the princess, but this love proved to be one-sided when he realized she had her eyes on her own appointed knight. Being of neither nobility or royalty, he was furious and became consumed with jealousy. This would remain unchanged until the events of the Great Calamity. At this time, a new discovery had been made. It was referred to as the Shrine of Resurrection. After some research, it was revealed to be a medical facility with the power to heal its patients using a long-term stasis function. While its powers would certainly help in the battle against Ganon, Zelda hopes that the future battle won't require its use. Ganon's revival was coming closer with every second. Monster attacks became more frequent, and did not go unnoticed as Zelda feared it was a premonition that the Calamity was returning soon. Preparations needed to be complete quickly for this fateful event if there were to be any hope in Hyrule prevailing this evil. The two would continue to become closer as they shared intimate moments, showing each other their true selves, for better or for worse. But Zelda was not the only one in love with Link, as Mipha had finally finished the Zora armor made specifically for him. Link would be returning to the domain soon, and Mipha wanted to give it to him the next time they met. Believing the old tales of a Ruta falling in love with a Hylian swordsman, she prepared to give it to him atop of a Ruta at sunset. Link's acceptance of the gift would mean that she could finally be together with the person that she loved. However, it was unknown whether she gave the armor to him or not, as that was the last time she ever wrote in her diary. Zelda's struggle continued to take a toll on her emotional state, as everything was now riding on her ability to unlock the power of the goddess. Her relentless training and lack of free will resulted in self-doubt and lack of confidence in succeeding. Her father becomes aware of this as she takes time out of her training to observe progress made with the Sheikah technology, and as a result forbids her from going anywhere near the machines. Acting as a king and not a father, he orders her to spend the rest of her time training, believing that if his daughter continues down her path, she will ultimately be the heir to a throne of nothing but failure. But this would bear fruitless results, as the pressure was beginning to become too much for her to bear. In truth, however, her father realizes the stress put on his daughter ever since the loss of her teacher and mother. But as a king, he realizes that he must stay strong for the sake of the kingdom despite desperately wanting to console his only daughter. But time was growing short. Zelda's 17th birthday was approaching, meaning that she would finally be permitted to enter Mount Lanayru. There she would be able to train at the Spring of Wisdom, the final of the 3 sacred springs.
Tomorrow is my 17th birthday, so then I shall go and make my way up the mountain.
But time was of the essence, as Zelda had experienced a dream one night of a goddess-like figure trying to urgently warn her about something. While she couldn't make out the words, Zelda knew this must have been related to Ganon's return. Both her and the king knew that the Spring of Wisdom would be her final chance to unlock her power. If not, her father would speak kindly to her, knowing that there is nothing else Zelda can do. Sadly, that moment would never come, and Zelda would never see her father again. Finally, it was the morning of Zelda's 17th birthday. The champions were to see her off at the gate and wait at the entrance until she returned at sunset from the spring. Revali ultimately decided not to send her off and instead fly over at sunset to greet her. With Mipha, Daruk, and Urbosa waiting at the base of the mountain, both Zelda and Link journeyed up to the final of the 3 springs. This was Hyrule's last hope, as time was about to run out. But after rigorous training at the top of Lanayru, it was proved to be all for nothing. Devastated, the princess made her way down the mountain where she was consoled by the 4 champions. However, this was cut short, as the next series of events would ultimately bring Hyrule to its imminent destruction. Ganon had returned. Despite not yet unlocking her sealing power, the princess and champions had to act quickly, with no time left to prepare. The pilots all returned to their divine beasts, and Link made his way with the princess to battle Ganon head-on after her refusal to go hide. After thousands of years, the 5 columns storing the Guardians would finally rise up and ready to unleash an attack on this evil. But Ganon was cunning, and responded with a plan beyond their imagining. With his malice, he seized control of the 4 divine beasts and all the Guardians. The autonomous machines that lay in the 5 columns awoke and ravaged through the castle and its town. All those that lived in the town were killed, including Zelda's father. Meanwhile, phantom versions of Ganon were sent to the 4 divine beasts to dispose of the champions. These included Water Blight, Fire Blight, Wind Blight, and Thunder Blight. All 4 champions tried to reclaim the divine beasts, but to no avail. The Blights ambushed and killed all of them, and the giant machines were left under the Calamity's control. Because of the sudden turn of events, Link fled along with Zelda, who now felt responsible for the deaths of the champions and her father. But in reality, no one could have predicted Ganon's unexpected plan. The princess and her knight retreated to Fort Hateno, where after being outnumbered, the hero prepared to sacrifice himself to save the king's daughter. But then, just before Link shielded the princess from a Guardian's beam, Zelda used her sealing power to destroy all the corrupt machines out of desperation to protect the person she loved. But it was too late, as Link succumbed to his wounds and passed out. Zelda would grieve over the loss of her knight, but she would not be the only one to witness his sacrifice. Back at Hyrule Castle, the Sheikah researchers fled to Kakariko Village. This included Cass's mentor. However, on the way back to his hometown, he had witnessed the knight shield the princess. This act of self-sacrifice made the court poet discard his initial impressions of the hero and the jealousy he had felt. He would make his way back to Kakariko Village to speak with the elder, Impa, on the matter. Filled with sorrow and grief, Zelda would continue to cry over her appointed knight. But when it seemed that all hope was lost, the Master Sword spoke to Zelda. Upon listening to the voice within the sword, she found out that there was a way to save him. Zelda created a plan that would be used to save Link and all of Hyrule. However, preparations had to be made. Zelda had Link put in the untested Shrine of Resurrection by Pyrrha and Robbie, along with the now damaged Sheikah slate. If all went well, the hero would be healed of all wounds so that he could one day defeat the Calamity. But it would take time for him to recover, and she knew this. The princess traveled to Kakariko to inform Impa of her plan, bringing the Master Sword along with her. She gave the Elder Link's champion tunic, an item that would be given to him once he recovered one of the 12 memories. Impa was tasked with informing Link about the legend 10,000 years ago, as well as his goal in freeing the 4 divine beasts across the land. Until the hero got all 12 memories, he would not be given the clue to the final flashback's location. Zelda then made her way to the Korok Forest through the Lost Woods. There, she would entrust the legendary blade to the Forest Guardian known as the Great Deku Tree. Like the hero, the weakened blade would spend the next century healing, but the princess's role in defeating the Calamity was still unfinished, as she had one more thing to do. Zelda made her way to Hyrule Castle to confront Ganon alone, where she would use her sealing power to keep Ganon locked away for the next 100 years.
Link, you are our final hope. The fate of Hyrule rests with you.
This way, Link would be safe recovering in the shrine and could one day slay the beast. But as the hero recovered, Hyrule would be at the mercy of monsters and guardians for the next 100 years. The Calamity would continue to ravage the land of Hyrule. Many Hylian settlements laid in ruins because of the Guardians' attacks. The Akala Citadel would serve as a last stand for Hyrule, where the last battle against Calamity Ganon's Guardians would take place. Sadly, even this area would fall under Ganon's control, as Guardians would overwhelm the Hylian forces. Only 2 Hylian settlements would remain during the chaos. Hateno Village would remain untouched by the Guardians thanks to Link and Zelda's last stand at Fort Hateno. Lurelin Village would stay safe because of its location along the coastline, but the Great Plateau would soon become inaccessible because of debris blocking the entrance. But this would guarantee the hero's safety as he healed within the medical chamber as it rested on this region. After putting the hero in the shrine to recover, Pyrrha and Robbie made their way back to Kakariko Village to meet with the Elder Impa. Worried that Ganon would get them all in a single strike, Impa remained in the village while the other 2 Sheikah researchers traveled to different regions, increasing the chances that one of them could talk to Link when he woke up. Pyrrha and Robbie went to Necluda and Akala, as the regions were home to plenty of ancient energy. They took the guidance stones from Hyrule Castle, and Pyrrha would research the Sheikah Slate as Robbie would begin to develop weapons that could combat Calamity Ganon's guardians. Meanwhile, Cass's teacher returned to Kakariko Village where Impa would explain to him Zelda's plan. His mind was made up after. He would seek the songs about the hero who sealed the Calamity away 10,000 years ago so they could be passed on to Link upon his return, so that the princess could be saved. Upon arriving in Necluda, Pyrrha would take shelter on a hill residing by Hateno Village. Research of the Sheikah Slate began, and it wasn't long before the discovery of more runes were made. These were Magnesis, Cryonis, Bombs, and Stasis, believed to have been made to assist the hero in his quest. Pyrrha began to create upgrades for the runes that she would eventually give to Link. This led to Pyrrha's attempts in creating a rune that would reverse the age process of individuals, allowing retired warriors to become young once again. This would strengthen the Hyrulean army and give them a better chance at defeating Calamity Ganon. The development for this rune would go on for quite some time. Robbie would settle down in Akala and begin to research ancient soldier gear for Link so that he would have a fighting chance against the Guardians. To speed up this process, Robbie made adjustments to the Guidance Stone to automate the entire refinement process of the gear. He would call this machine Cherry, the name of his first love. But trouble began to stir, as one of the Yiga clan members fell in love with a woman and had 2 children. Wanting to change his ways, the Sheikah referred to as Dorian tried to leave the clan to live a peaceful life with his family. However, in response to this, his wife was killed. Fearing for the safety of his kids, Dorian then would use his position as gatekeeper to gather information about Link in Kakariko Village to give to the Yiga. The Yiga would continue to keep tabs on the hero, and would plan to eliminate him once he woke up so nothing could stop Ganon's return. Meanwhile, Pyrrha's research for the anti-aging rune was progressing. A beta version of the rune had been made, but Pyrrha lacked the Sheikah Slate as it was within the shrine with the hero. After some work, she recreated a Sheikah Slate and had her assistant shoot the rays at the Sheikah woman's body. However, the rune proved to work a little too well as her age rapidly reversed until the point where she resembled a 6-year-old. The development of an age-boosting rune began in hopes of reverting her age back to normal, but it would take more time to create. Back at the Akala Tech Lab, Robbie's age began to get the better of him. At 90 years, he would begin to slow down and worry that he wouldn't make it long enough to finish his armor. However, around that time a young woman called Jaren would arrive. She would end up marrying Robbie and act as his assistant. After training with Pyrrha, she quickly proved herself capable as she carried the blue flame from Tumlia Heights and even improved designs of Cherry. Thanks to the redesigns, the oven soon could craft ancient soldier gear and speak in native Hylian. But Robbie's exchanges with Cherry would hurt Jaren and lead to the restoration of her mechanical way of speaking. From now on, he would refer to her as Ancient Oven. Sometime later, the two would have a son named Grant. But Robbie knew this would only be a temporary peace, as Zelda was becoming weaker with each day she held back Calamity Ganon. Back at the Hateno Ancient Tech Lab, research for powering the hero's runes was finally complete. Not only that, but her age-boosting rune was finished. But her research came to a halt when the blue flame for the furnace died out. After being seen by a child from the village, Pyrrha's embarrassment from being trapped in a 6-year-old's body would lead to her staying locked in the laboratory until Link's arrival. Sadly, after spending years researching the ancient songs about the hero, Cass's mentor was on the verge of death. In order to fulfill his mission, he would task his student Cass with the job of finding the ancient songs so that they could be passed to Link in hopes of saving the princess. He would pass away some years before Link woke up, but Cass promised to fulfill his teacher's role and traveled across the land of Hyrule. But Zelda's power to hold back Ganon was getting weaker by the day. and the Yiga set out to take the hero's life once he woke up. Link was going to wake up soon, and the fate of Hyrule rested on his shoulders. In a weakened state, Zelda began to call out for the hero to wake up from his long slumber. 100 years after the events of the Great Calamity, Link would wake up within the enclosed Shrine of Resurrection. But while the hero had fully healed, it came with a cost. Link's memory of his previous life was wiped, the result of being in the chamber for a century, no doubt. It wasn't long before he came into the possession of the ancient relic called the Sheikah SLATE, and made his way out of the Shrine of Resurrection. After a century, the door would open, and Link would be greeted with the rays of sunlight. His adventure to save Hyrule began. Confused about who he was or why he had been placed in the chamber, Link made conversation with the old man, a local of the area who informed the hero of the Great Plateau and its history as the birthplace of Hyrule. Zelda's voice would soon cut the silence of the plateau as she gives him instructions which would lead to the activation of the Sheikah Tower residing in that region. As the Great Plateau Tower rose from the ground, all other towers residing in the different regions would become active after thousands of years. Upon activation of the now elevated towers, the power to all the shrines surrounding Hyrule would be restored. However, these actions would not go unnoticed. When Calamity Ganon sensed the return of the hero, he began to create a physical form capable of eliminating Hyrule's last hope. With the princess barely holding back the beast and his creation of a new body, Link was on a time limit. Upon descending the tower, Link would come across the old man who made a deal with the hero. Once Link completed the 4 trials within the shrines on the plateau, he would receive the paraglider. With it, Link could make his way to the castle where Ganon lay for 100 years. Through these ancient chambers, different runes would be added to the Sheikah SLATE for the hero's use. Magnesis, Stasis, Cryonis, and Bomb runes were obtained and used to solve the puzzles each shrine had to offer. The result of completing these tests were Spirit Orbs, items that would allow the user to increase their health or stamina. Upon the retrieval of all 4 orbs, Link would come face to face with the old man atop the Temple of Time. The real identity of the old man was revealed to be the deceased king, Rome Boss Faramus Hyrule. Link was told about everything, the prophecy, his position as Zelda's appointed knight, and the events of the Great Calamity. The hero found out about the princess's fate, sealing both her and Ganon in Hyrule Castle for 100 years. Lamenting his decisions as a king and her father, Rome requests that Link save his daughter and defeat Ganon. Link's next destination was Kakariko Village to speak with the Elder Impa. With the main quest to defeat Calamity Ganon at Hyrule Castle, he was given the paraglider and could now get off the plateau. But despite this, Link would first make his way to Kakariko to meet the Elder as the king suggested. In doing so, he would learn about the events 10,000 years ago and the legend of Calamity Ganon. But it would not be easy for the hero. To have the best chance at defeating the evil lurking in the castle, Link would have to free the 4 divine beasts across the land. Divine Beast Va Ruta, piloted by the Zora champion Mipha. Divine Beast Va Meadow, piloted by Revali of the Rito. Divine Beast Va Rudania, controlled by the Goron Daruk. And Divine Beast Va Naboris, operated by the Gerudo chief Urbosa. But Link was weak, and his Sheikah SLATE was still damaged. He would need to become stronger through his travels to prepare himself for the worst. The results of the Great Calamity led to the destruction of the kingdom. Ganon's monsters roamed the lands of Hyrule, bringing fear into the hearts of the citizens. Link would have to become stronger if he wished to save the kingdom from this crisis. To become more powerful, he would learn basic combat skills from the shrine within the Sheikah village. This was one of many shrines scattered throughout the land. Upon completion, he would gather more Spirit Orbs as a way to increase both his health and stamina. Some shrines were hidden behind complicated puzzles put together by the monks, and some tested his ability in combat. If the hero were to succeed, he needed to complete as many of these as possible, but during this daunting task, Link still lacked his memories. In order to restore functionality to his Sheikah SLATE, Link traveled to Hateno where he would find the ancient tech lab run by Impa's sister, Dr. Pyrrha, and her assistant Simon. Upon examination of the Sheikah SLATE, the Sheikah woman instructs Link to relight the furnace so functionality of the tablet can be restored. Once the furnace was relit with the fire of the ancient furnace, the camera and album were restored. A compendium where the data of monsters and items was also added to the device, and would record information that would assist the hero. But most importantly, 12 pictures of different locations were revealed, all taken by Princess Zelda. These images were vital in restoring Link's memories, as he had accompanied her to all of the locations. Link would also now be able to upgrade the Sheikah sensor bomb, and stasis runes at the cost of ancient materials. Back at Kakariko Village, recovering one of the 12 memories in the album would award the player with the champion's tunic, a garment that was worn by Link 100 years ago. Scattered across the kingdom were also 4 fairy fountains. Once Link freed the fairies, he would be given the chance to upgrade his armor in exchange for certain materials. Along with that, dead horses were given the chance to be revived when traveling to see the horse god at the Millennia Spring. Towers for each region could also be discovered, and upon activation they would update the Sheikah slate with a map of their respective locations. With the help of the tablet's teleportation, traversing the vast land of Hyrule would be made much easier. However, while Link slowly became stronger with more gear and spirit orbs from shrines, the Guardians were still a threat. Luckily, Robbie had completed his ancient armor and weapons and was awaiting Link's arrival. After letting the Acolyte Ancient Tech Lab's furnace, ancient armor as well as weapons strong enough to combat the Guardians were made available to him. Guardians weren't the only threat to the hero, however, as it wasn't long before the Yiga clan learnt of Link's awakening in the shrine. Many members disguised themselves as travelers in hopes of catching the hero off guard and killing him, ensuring Calamity Ganon's victory. Dorian would eventually come clean to the hero, admitting that he was feeding the Yiga clan information on him and Kakariko for the sake of keeping Impa and Paya safe. But upon traveling throughout Hyrule, Link would meet a Korok called Hestu and learn of the Korok Forest, a location guarded by the Lost Woods. Rumors of the legendary blade residing in this sacred forest would surface, but the location of this mysterious place was unknown. If Link found hidden Koroks throughout the land, he would be given Korok seeds that could be used to increase his inventory space. Link would also meet Cass throughout his travels, who would share the ancient songs of the hero with him in hopes of helping Link with his quest. While Cass was aware of Link's identity, he kept it to himself as he continued to look for the ancient songs by his deceased mentor's request. As Link recovered more and more memories, however, the pressure put on him increased. Zelda's power was growing weak, and he still needed to take back the Divine Beasts. Ganon was continuing to generate a physical body, and he would soon be free from the Princess's seal. While Revali was killed during the events of the Great Calamity, his legacy would live on within the Rito. One of the platforms in the village would be named Revali's Landing as a memorial to the deceased Rito champion. The flight range would continue to be used by the warriors to improve their aerial combat skills. But trouble began to brew as Meadow had mysteriously began circling the village from above. The Divine Beast's cannons would shoot down anything in the sky, restricting the Rito from flying too close. Once they realized this ancient technology had become a threat, efforts to shoot down the mechanical beast from the sky began. A Rito warrior known as Teba would step up and try to destroy the Divine Beast, but to no avail. The Elder Keneally knew that only a champion could stop a Divine Beast, but none of the Rito warriors would listen to him. Eventually, Teba and another Rito known as Hearth would try to take down Meadow, but their actions would result in Hearth getting injured. After witnessing the sight of Meadow in the skies, Link would make his way through to Bantha to Rito Village. He then spoke with the Elder, who believed Link was a descendant of the former Hylian champion. At Keneally's request, Link would help locate Teba as the Elder was worried that he would try to fight the Divine Beast alone. After talking to the Rito warrior's wife, the hero found him at the flight range. After convincing the Rito of his skill in archery, he agreed to fight Meadow with Link. But at this state, it was impossible to board the airborne Divine Beast, as it had an impenetrable shield. 4 defensive cannons would need to be destroyed before the shield would go down. Teba would act as a decoy for the cannons as Link shot them with bomb arrows. After taking down the ancient weapons, Meadow could now be boarded by the hero, but the battle had left Teba injured, so he left Link and returned to the flight range. Upon landing on the Divine Beast, Revali would direct Link to one of the terminals. After activating it with a Sheikah slate, a map was obtained. With the help of controls to adjust the rotation of Meadow, Link is able to activate the 5 terminals in the machine, but when trying to activate the main control unit, he would be interrupted by the Scourge of Divine Beast Meadow, Windblight Ganon. After a long battle against the enemy responsible for Revali's demise, Link would finally be able to take back control of the Divine Beast, freeing the spirit of the Rito champion. As a reward, the hero was given Revali's special ability dubbed Revali's Gale. It would without a doubt help him in his quest to defeat Ganon. The spirit of the champion would take his place above Rito Village, waiting for his moment to finally strike Calamity Ganon. When returning to the village, Link was awarded with the Great Eagle Bow, the weapon wielded by Champion Revali when he was alive. But it was too early to celebrate, as 3 Divine Beasts remained. The news of Mipha's death filled all of the Zora with grief. Because of her sudden departure, the elders would grow to despise Hylians, being her close friend and the hero. Link was blamed for her demise as he had failed to protect the princess. Out of sorrow and respect for the departed champion, the Zora planned to send Mipha's light-scale Triton down the river, but this was stopped when Mipha's spirits speak to them through the weapon. Upon hearing this, a replica of the Zora champion's spear was created and called the Ceremonial Trident, a tribute for the fallen champion. While Mipha's father didn't hold a grudge against the hero, he would spend the next many years consumed with guilt and regret his decision of allowing his daughter to pilot the Divine Beast. Sidon would grow up without his sister, but never forget about her sacrifice. A statue of the Zora champion would be made as a tribute to her bravery and kindness. A Zora helm that Link had won in defeating the Lionel years ago would also be enshrined within Toto Lake as a tribute to the fallen champion. Both the king and prince would prove to be capable in defending their home from Calamity Ganon's monsters. A stray guardian would make its way past Upland Zorana into the domain. All attempts to stop the rogue machine bore fruitless results, as even the best soldiers' spears had barely left a dent on the metal hull. Without a thought of his own safety, the Zora king would pick up the guardian and hurl it into a ravine. A scar would be earned from that fateful day, and acted as a token of his triumph. The Zora's trust and respect for their king would grow beyond compare. But this wasn't the only time the Zora would be in danger. A giant octorock the size of a mountain would terrorize the village's fishers. Many sought out to defeat this giant beast, but none would return. Prince Sidon would confront the enemy in hopes of eliminating it, but would be swallowed by the giant when dodging its stones, just as all hope was lost. The octorock would spit out the prince after repeatedly stabbing its stomach with a silver scale spear. The creature escaped, never to return, and the fishers of Hateno Bay would pass down this heroic tale of the Zora prince who chased off the octorock. But despite the king and prince's past accomplishments, nothing could prepare them for what happened next. Out of nowhere, Ruta would wake up and begin delivering heavy rainfall to the area surrounding the East Reservoir Lake, fearing for the lives of the Hylians who lived downstream. Attempts were made to stop the Divine Beast before the reservoir burst, using Zelda's research as guidance. One of the Zora named Segan would hit an orb on the Divine Beast's shoulder which would prove to slow down the water flow of Ruta. But due to the Zora's weakness to electricity, there would be no way to defeat the Divine Beast without any casualties. Prince Sidon would leave the domain along with other Zora to search for a Hylian willing to take up this heroic task of taming Ruta. The prince would eventually run into Link and request that he visit the domain, unaware that he was talking to the former champion of Hyrule. After a long and difficult road to the Zora settlement, Link would talk with King Dorphan, who recognized him as the wielder of the sword that sealed the darkness. The king wouldn't be the only one to remember the hero, as the other Zora would recognize Link, but the elders still held a grudge on the hero because of Mipha's death. After learning of Link's long slumber and his amnesia, Dorphan would ask that Link help the prince in stopping Ruta for the sake of the citizens and the princess, who he found out was still alive in Hyrule Castle. Link was given the Zora armor so that he could ascend waterfalls, but the elder Muzu would object as that armor was crafted by Mipha for the one she loved. In order to convince Muzu to tell the hero where to obtain shock arrows, Link put on the armor, which had fit him perfectly. It was then revealed that Link was the one Mipha had romantic feelings towards. Muzu then cooperated, telling Link about the stories of a Lionel making its home on Polymus Mountain. After going up and retrieving the shock arrows to use against Ruta, Sidon would meet Link at the East Reservoir ready to fight against the Divine Beast. Link rode on Sidon's back, destroying a barrage of ice attacks from Ruta as he scaled the beast and shot the orbs with shock arrows. After shooting down all of the orbs, the Divine Beast would stop dispensing water and could now be boarded by the hero. Sidon would return to the domain, and it would now be up to the hero to finish the job. Mipha's voice would cut the ambience as she instructed Link to go to a terminal within the beast. After receiving a map and controls for Ruta's trunk, he would solve the complex puzzles in the Divine Beast and activate all the terminals. But upon activating the main unit, he would have to fight Waterblight Ganon. But he would persevere and overpower his foe, avenging the death of the Zora princess. With her spirit finally free, Mipha would give Link her power that was called Mipha's Grace. It would revive the hero if he ever fell in battle, and she then would take her spot with Ruta atop the mountain. When Ganon returned, she would be ready. When returning to the cane, Link was awarded with the Light-Scale Trident, a weapon that Mipha used to defeat her foes. After witnessing his bravery against the Divine Beast, the elders would no longer bear any ill will towards the champion. With two Divine Beasts down, all that was left was Naboris and Rudania, but the sudden eruptions of Death Mountain would hint at Link's next destination. The stories of the powerful Daruk would not fade from history, as a statue of the deceased champion would be carved out of the face of a mountain. Time would pass, and Daruk's descendant Yunobo would inherit the Goron champion's power. Little did the Goron youth know that he would need it against the fight with Rudania. Rudania would eventually wake up and cause volcanic eruptions atop Death Mountain. Because of this turn of events, the North Mine would be abandoned, putting a dent in their mining operations. They would be limited to extracting ore from the Southern Mine, but this would not last forever, as Link would arrive to deal with Rudania. The Elder Bluto and Yunobo would try to chase Rudania off with the use of cannons, but time and time again the Divine Beast would come back. The hero would arrive to Goron City where he talked to Bluto. having back pains. The Elder would task Link with finding Yunobo, who went to the abandoned North Mine for painkillers. Once freed from the room, the Goron youth would thank the player for his help, and return to the city. After giving the Elder his medication, Yunobo waited at the base of Death Mountain as the two of them were going to chase off the Divine Beast again. But Bluto's back pains would lead to him canceling the operation as he wasn't fit to take on Rudania. Link would head over to tell Yunobo this news, but upon arriving would convince him to help the hero in taking back the beast. After lowering the bridge, both made their way up to the active volcano. After evading Rudania's sentry units and using the 3 cannons, the Divine Beast would fall into the volcano. Yunobo then stood back as he witnessed the hero descend to board Rudania. After following Daruk's instructions, Link would be able to access the Divine Beast's controls as well as retrieve a map of its interior. Activating all terminals would lead to the activation of the main control unit, but only after slaying Fireblight Ganon and freeing Daruk's spirit. As a reward, Link received Daruk's protection, an impenetrable defense which would greatly assist him in combat. Because of his bravery in defeating Rudania, Link was given Daruk's weapon that was used 100 years ago, the Boulder Breaker. Link now had one final destination, the Gerudo Wasteland, where the last of the 4 Divine Beasts lay. While it isn't known if Riju was a descendant of Urbosa, she would become the chief of the Gerudo after her mother suddenly passed away. While treated kindly by her people, Riju could see the worry in their eyes. She becomes concerned that she will not be as good of a chief as her mother, and this would only worsen as Naboris had waken up after many years of inactivity. Riju would investigate the Divine Beast the next day, but as she drew close to it, she was driven back by the sandstorm and lightning. Naboris would spook her sandseal Patricia, who made her way back towards the beast after Riju tried retreating back to the town. She would go unconscious and be saved by Buliara, who felt guilty for the events that took place. From that day on, she would never leave the young chief's side, but it would only get worse, as the Yiga had stolen the Thunderhelm, a family heirloom that was vital in stopping Naboris as it could withstand the Divine Beast's lightning. Despite this, Buliara would not leave Riju's side. The soldiers would search tirelessly for the heirloom, and would eventually find the Yiga clan's hideout, but they would be unable to get close to it, as it was heavily guarded by Yiga foot soldiers. Riju's prayers would soon be answered, as Link made his way through the wasteland to the town, but because of their laws, he would not be permitted to enter. Link would return to Karakara Bazaar where he purchased women's clothes from a Hylian. Being taken for a Vi, he was granted access to Gerudo Town where he met the chief. Acknowledging Link as the former Hylian champion, he would first be tasked with recovering the Thunderhelm from Karusa Valley. Link made his way to the Yiga clan hideout where he would have to sneak past the guards. The hero would come face to face with Master Koga, the leader of the clan, and fight him. Upon defeating him, the Thunderhelm was retrieved from the base and taken back to Riju. Link would meet the chief at the outpost outside the sandstorm, and after receiving the Thunderhelm's power, both would chase down Naboris in the desert. By staying within the Thunderhelm's barrier, Link could shoot the legs with bomb arrows, bringing the Divine Beast to its knees. The hero boarded Naboris, ready to finally finish what he started 100 years ago. By listening to Urbosa's instructions, he would get a map and controls for Naboris. Through his exploration of the Divine Beast, Link would activate the 5 terminals after puzzles were solved, but he would have to defeat Thunderblight Ganon before activating the main control unit and taking back Naboris from Ganon's control. Urbosa would congratulate Link, as their century-old plan could finally take effect. The ability to summon lightning would be given to the hero, which was called Urbosa's Fury. Taking aim at Hyrule Castle, the deceased chief was ready to avenge her fallen comrades as she waited for the moment to strike Ganon down. As a token of their gratitude for calming Naboris, Riju awarded Link with Urbosa's sword and shield. He could now use the Scimitar of the Seven and Daybreaker in his future battles. With all of the Divine Beasts taken care of, Link would have a better chance at defeating Ganon, but at this time, the legendary sword within the forest was awaiting the hero's arrival. After finding out that the sword lay in the Great Hyrule Forest, Link would journey through the Lost Woods to obtain it. After navigating through the Enchanted Woods, he wound up in the Korok Forest. Here he would meet up once again with Hestu, but he would also come face to face with the Great Deku Tree. The Forest Guardian told Link about the sword that rested in its pedestal for 100 years, waiting for the hero, but he was warned of the risks of pulling the blade in a weak state. If Link tried to retrieve the blade without 13 hearts, he would certainly die. But after taking on shrines within the kingdom, he was ready. After 100 years, the Master Sword had finally returned to its rightful owner. The sword proved to be powerful, as it would deal extra damage to enemies tainted by Ganon's malice. With it, he would without a doubt be capable in defeating the Calamity. But by retrieving the sword, a new challenge would open up to him. By putting the blade back in its pedestal, Link got access to the Trial of the Sword. After completing each set of trials, the Master Sword's power would be increased. Once the hero completed the beginning, middle, and final trials, the legendary blade would be upgraded to its awakened state. With this, it would be at full power at all times. However, the hero had one final task to complete before heading to Hyrule Castle, and to complete it, he would have to return to the place that it all started. After freeing the spirits of all the champions, Link was instructed to return to the Shrine of Resurrection to put the Sheikah slate back in its pedestal. Upon doing so, a final challenge was presented to him by the monk Maz Koshia. A new weapon would be given to the hero called the One-Hit Obliterator. It would defeat any enemy in a single blow, but the reverse was also true. The hero traveled to 4 locations on the plateau where he would need to defeat all the enemies to uncover 4 other shrines. These proved to be a challenge, as Link would have to navigate through them without taking any damage, but the shrines awarded him with spirit orbs, allowing one final upgrade to his health or stamina. After solving all 4 of the shrines, the weapon would break, creating new quests for each individual champion. When doing this challenge, Link would confront Cass as he was on his own mission to complete his teacher's unfinished songs about the 4 champions. Once solving the 3 riddles along with their shrines for each champion, Link would have a rematch against the Blights in the Illusionary Realm. Completing each champion's songs would upgrade the champion abilities and a new memory, but the completion of all the champion's songs would lead to Link's final challenge. He would once again put his Sheikah slate in the pedestal, which opened up the final divine beast under the Shrine of Resurrection. By solving the puzzles within the 4 rooms, the main door's locks would be removed. There, he would come face to face with Maz Koshia, who challenged Link to a battle. Defeating the monk would result in completing his final trial, and he was awarded with the Master Cycle 0, the final rune that acted as Link's divine beast. Link would return to the Shrine of Resurrection, where Cass would play his now completed song called The Champion's Ballad. A final memory was obtained, and Link would receive the picture taken that day from Cass. The champion's spirits were free. The blade that seals the darkness was in the hero's possession, and his memories had also been recovered. It was time to take the fight to Hyrule Castle. It wouldn't be easy to get to Calamity Ganon, as an army of guardians and enemies lay within the castle. I would mention the Lynels, but at this point the video is already long enough, so let's just say the hero ignored them. The aftermath of the Great Calamity was clear, as the once occupied castle would lay in ruins. Zelda's room and study could be visited, revealing her diary and research notes. The hero would know of the struggles she had faced as the princess with the blood of the goddess, which would motivate him to finally end this 100-year-long battle. Many powerful enemies were within the castle walls, but defeating these foes would wield powerful gear that could help in the fight against Ganon. Visiting the lockup and defeating a Stalnox would reward the hero with a Hylian shield, a piece of gear worthy for the former champion of Hyrule. A shrine could be found within the docks, giving the hero a major test of strength challenge. But this would be nothing compared to the battle that lay ahead. After the tough journey through the castle, the end goal was in reach. After a century, Link would walk into the Sanctum and defeat the ancient evil, as the prophecy had foretold. Upon entering the room, Zelda would release her grasp on Ganon, but because of Link's quick arrival, what fell out of the cocoon would be an incomplete state of Ganon's physical body. The floor would break, sending both the hero and Ganon into the laboratory. After noticing the hero, Ganon prepared to strike him down. But at this moment, all 4 champions striked with their divine beasts. Revali with Meadow, Mipha with Ruta, Daruk with Rudania, and Urbosa with Naboris. The attacks would hit Ganon, taking half of his strength away. The rest was up to Link. Wielding the sword that seals the darkness, he would fight Calamity Ganon as he lay a barrage of attacks onto the hero. His weapons combined with the ancient technology would put Link to the ultimate test. But after the fight between the 2 strong opponents, Link would finally deliver the final blow to Calamity Ganon and destroy his physical body. But it wasn't over yet, since Link had one final challenge to face: Dark Beast Ganon. The princess would give the hero a bow strong enough to oppose a calamity called the Bow of Light. With it, Link would shoot the glowing points on the beast until the final hit.
Finish him, Link!
It was over. As Dark Beast Ganon lay defeated, Zelda would emerge from the ancient evil and use her sealing power to destroy Ganon. The Calamity would disintegrate into nothing, and Hyrule was finally free from this evil. Reunited with the princess, both would be relieved to know that their jobs were finally over. Link and Zelda would leave Hyrule Castle, but not before the spirits of the king and 4 champions would vanish, satisfied that they could finally rest in peace. While Ganon was gone for now, the princess and her knight had much to do. The Calamity had laid many areas in ruin, and the restoration of these places would take time. They first would head to Zora's domain because Divine Beast Ruta had stopped working. The two would also offer closure to the Zora King, as his daughter's sacrifice was no longer in vain. Zelda would push on with Link, believing that if everyone worked together, Hyrule could be restored to its former glory. Or, perhaps, even beyond.